All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're having a good day today. Thank you for joining me. My lesson is on operant conditioning. I sent out the pretest. I think all of you took it. That's good. So now I'm going to give the lesson on operant conditioning. Bear with me. I did get my wisdom teeth removed the other day. My face is still a little swollen, so we're going to get through it. Um, so, what is operant conditioning? Well, operant conditioning is a method of learning utilizing stimuli and the consequences of behavior. It was created by a man named B.F. Skinner. He took the idea of classical conditioning, but he didn't like it that much. He thought it was too simple. It didn't fully encapsulate how human beings thought. So he decided to come up with his own idea, which he would call operant conditioning. So Skinner's original experiment, this is called Skinner's box. It helps with both positive and negative reinforcement. So for the case of positive reinforcement, there was a lever in the box, and eventually the rat would just randomly pull the lever. And when in the case of the positive reinforcement, if he wanted to train the rat to pull the lever, the rat would randomly pull the lever, and the lever would give the rat a pellet of food. So eventually the rat would learn, okay, every time I pull this lever, I'm going to get some food back. So eventually the rat would learn to pull the lever when it needed food. They also did negative reinforcement with Skinner's box. As you can see, there's an electric grid on the bottom. I'll talk about that in a second, but basically the rat pulls the lever to stop the shock. So we're going to get into the keywords. So all types of reinforcement and conditioning revolve around a stimulus. A stimulus is any change in the present environment of an organism. It can be good or bad, such as food arriving or the shock wire on the floor activating. So in Skinner's box, when we talk about positive reinforcement, um, that is rewarding the individual with something they like or a positive stimulus. For the Skinner's box, that was, of course, the rat getting food for pulling the lever. So the stimulus was the food, and they got that by pulling the lever. That was the behavior that he was trying to train into them. So negative reinforcement is rewarding an individual by taking away something they don't like or a negative stimulus. So in the Skinner's box experiment, the floor on the bottom, they would send shocks through that floor, and the shocks would go through until the rat pulled the lever. So the stimulus in that case was the shock floor. And if the rat wanted to stop that negative stimulus, they would pull the lever, and the rat would learn, okay, I pull the lever and the shocks stop. And then there's punishment, which is presenting a negative stimulus when an undesired result is presented. That is something that Skinner didn't exactly stress that much in his thing, but that is something important because negative stimulus is this is like you give a student a negative stimulus, which would be like making them go sit in the corner if they get too out of control or hyper, they can't handle themselves, things like that. Punishment is a part of that. Here's some more examples of reinforcement. So the stimulus in this first example would be the bad smell. The behavior for that, how to correct it, how to remove the negative stimulus would be to take a shower, and then the smell would be gone. Positive reinforcement, if you wanted hot water in your shower, the behavior you learn to do, because we've done this so many times, is you turn on the hot water, you turn the valve so the hot water comes out. That's just a small example of positive reinforcement. There's more examples right there. Um, Sorry about that. Manager rewards the employee for productivity. So the positive stimulus is the reward for their good job, and the employee's productivity increases. Those are just a few examples. Now we're going to talk about schedules. Now the schedules are how often they get the stimulus based on when they did the behavior or how often. So first, we're going to start with two key terms, which would be the response rate and the extinction rate. The response rate is how quickly the behavior is performed or how hard it is to perform the behavior. And the extinction rate is how quickly the behavior would stop if it isn't reinforced. So the extinction rate mostly has to do with learning because you want students to keep continuing the behaviors even though they aren't always going to be reinforced. So you still want students to respond to questions even if they aren't going to be, example, getting a candy every time. So the first type of schedule is continuous reinforcement. This is whenever the behavior is performed, it's immediately reinforced. So the example I used in this slide was giving a student candy for every correct answer. And Skinner's box, it was the rat gets food pellet every time it answers something correctly, or excuse me, every time it pulls the lever. The response rate for this one is slow, meaning the behavior is performed often and it isn't that hard to perform. The extinction rate is fast, so as soon as you stop rewarding it, it's not going to be doing it that much. So if the rat suddenly stopped getting food for pulling the lever, the rat would stop pulling the lever very quickly. It wouldn't need to do that anymore. It didn't really learn the importance of that behavior. Next is fixed ratio. This behavior is reinforced only after the desired behavior is performed a number of times. The example I used in this slide was giving a child a gold star after they finish 5 book summary tests. So the student reads the book, has to take a little mini test that you write up on it, and after they complete 5, not just after every single one, but after they complete 5, you reward them. The response rate is fast, so the child does perform these behaviors a lot. And the extinction rate, which is the most important one, is medium. So students will learn that, oh, if I do this behavior, I'll be rewarded. They'll continue to read, and that's the important part. So that's fixed ratio. Fixed ratio is really simple to think about. You just not everyone is good at math, but you can use math 5 to 1. So in this one, 5 summary tests gives you 1 gold star. Just think of it as ratio, and then fixed means it doesn't change. So then we have fixed interval reinforcement, which is providing reinforcement a certain time after the desired behavior is given. So the example for this one is giving the rat a pellet within 15-minute time period after the lever was pulled. So the rat is still learning, okay, I pull the lever, I'm going to get food. It's not instant anymore, but it still knows, okay, I pulled this, I'm going to get food. The response rate is medium and the extraction rate once again is medium, which means it'll learn, okay, pull the lever, get the food, pull the lever, get the food. And you're conditioning it to learn that. Next, we have variable ratio reinforcement. This is reinforcement given after a random number of responses. So with fixed ratio, we had once again the fixed ratio. The key difference here is fixed and variable. So for the fixed ratio, it was 5 to 1. For this variable ratio, it's random. So no one knows. It could be after one response. It could be after 200 responses. The example here is gambling. You hit the slot. You don't know if you're going to win or not. Sometimes you win first try. You get lucky. Sometimes you don't win all night. The response rate is fast and the extinction rate is slow. So people are going to be doing this. This type of conditioning sticks with them. The extinction rate is slow. Next, we have variable interval, which is the final type of conditioning schedule. The reinforcement is given at a random time after the behavior is made. So the example is a rat gets a pellet of food on average every 5 minutes after a lever is pressed. So the rat presses the lever. The first one may come instantly. The second one may come 10 minutes. As long as the average is 5 minutes, it's timed. So variable and interval. So when we refer to interval, we refer to time, and variable means it's changing. It's not fixed. So after a random time, the rat gets food. This produces the same response rate and extinction rate, but if you look back at variable ratio is just a little bit better, but it still gives a fast response rate and a slow extinction rate. So applying this to the classroom, reinforcing positive behaviors is extremely important to teaching. We talk a lot in teaching about rewarding little kids, such as giving candies. A lot of teachers give candies for correct responses or things like that. That's all about wanting to create an environment in which students feel good about participating in classroom activities and the learning. You want students who are all active. You want them all to be engaged in the learning. And sometimes using positive reinforcement is a great way to do that. When schedules are applied, you want schedules to have a slow extinction rate, as it means students hold on to the behaviors longer. They've learned them better. And continuously providing reinforcement can be beneficial for students, but as soon as the reinforcement is pulled away, behavior stops. So when you look at that, giving a student a candy for every time they answer, that could be good in the short run, but in the long run, you're not going to be helping that student much. They're going to learn, they're going to come to think, okay, if I answer right, I'm going to get rewarded. So if they stop rewarding me, I'm just not going to answer. That is not something that you necessarily want as a teacher. So focusing on fixed interval, variable intervals, things like that. Rewarding students over time teaches them, okay, I need to engage with class. I need to have good behavior management, and they will learn. So yeah, that is my lesson on operant conditioning. I will send out the post test. You take it, send it back to me, and thank you guys very much.